All right, guys, thanks for hopping on. We'll get started here in just 1 minute. All right, thank you everybody for hopping on. Jessica, I think we need to end the Facebook live stream. I don't think we can do both.
Okay.
All right, thanks everybody for hopping on our Instagram live. Looks like you can't do both at the same time, so we're going to go live on Instagram, and we'll post this recording on our Facebook for anybody that wants to go back and watch our content. In terms of this week's FAFSA Q&A, really appreciate those of you that are on here live watching. We're going to do our best to answer your FAFSA questions, Tennessee Promise Scholarship questions. Really excited for today's session. We have Jessica Macy from our team here today. She leads up most of our communication, external communication, particularly that the communication going to students and school counselors. So I'm going to allow Jessica to do a little bit of an introduction, who she is, where she grew up, where she went to college, and then we will get into the FAFSA piece of this. So go ahead, Jessica.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. I'm super excited to be on with all of you today. As Ben said, my name is Jessica Macy. I've been with Tennessee Achieves for about 5 years now, and I handle all of our external communication. So when you're receiving an email from Tennessee Achieves or a text message from Tennessee Achieves, that's something that we have curated for you specifically. So I am handling all of that communication so you guys stay informed, up to date on all of your college and Tennessee Promise scholarship requirements. I actually grew up out of state in Michigan, but I have been in Tennessee, and my family lives in Robertson County, Tennessee for over 10 years. So I've almost lived about a third of my life here as well. So definitely been in Tennessee for a while, and I went to the University of Tennessee and I got a degree in psychology. So super excited to be here today.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for introducing yourself. I think it's good for the students and parents and everybody out there to get to know our team through this as well. It's a great way to ask questions, but it's also a good way to get to know our team. So since Jessica heads up all of our external communication, particularly that around requirements, I wanted her to give us just a little bit of an overview of how we plan to communicate the FAFSA requirement with you, the students, parents, and what that communication will look like over the next about a month and a half or so before that February 1st deadline. So if you want to go over that a little bit, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So hopefully you all are checking your email, especially every Monday. You will continue to receive Monday emails from us at Tennessee Achieves, and this will be the entire time that you are eligible for Tennessee Promise. But as Ben mentioned, in addition to our weekly emails on Mondays, when there is a deadline coming up for Tennessee Promise, we also make sure that we are sending targeted communication regarding those eligibility requirements to you. So you actually should have started receiving this already. What we do is we send, like I said, it's targeted. So for example, if Ben has not done his FAFSA and he is a Tennessee Promise student, I will send Ben an email saying, Ben, as of this date, you have not filed that FAFSA. So if Ben is receiving that email in his inbox, that means Ben specifically has not completed this requirement yet. When we get back in January, we will begin sending that targeted communication to you every single week outside of your Monday email. So it's super important that you're checking your email. We'll also send you text messages. But one thing, like I said, that's really important to keep in mind is if that is coming to you through your text, through your email, that means you specifically. So make sure you're reading that communication, taking a couple minutes. That way you know, okay, maybe I haven't done my FAFSA yet. I need to start doing that by February 1st, 2022. And if you're not receiving that communication from us yet, if you're like, oh man, I don't think I've received a text or an email from Tennessee Achieves yet, first, make sure you're checking your junk or spam folders, but then reach out to somebody at Tennessee Achieves. You could even message us on our Instagram and let us know what your updated contact information is, so that way you can receive all of that communication from us. One more thing I'll say about this, if I'm targeting Ben and I'm saying, Ben, you haven't done your FAFSA, but he's like, you know, I have a confirmation email. I think I have done this requirement. Don't just sit on that. Make sure you're replying to our communication, because that means something's wrong and we don't have it in our records. And we want to make sure you get credit for completing that requirement.
Yeah, that's all really, really good. Thank you for covering that. I think a couple of things really stand out that I want to reiterate. The first one of those is, if you get an email that says you haven't done this requirement, that means you haven't done the requirement. So don't misinterpret that or think it just went to everyone. If you get that, and to Jessica's point, if you think that you have done it, reply and let us know, and let us help you troubleshoot that problem, because I think a lot of times students don't realize that we don't know what we don't know. And if you have a problem or a question, unless you tell us, we don't know that. So if you run into one of these issues and you are getting a reminder for something that you think that you've already done, cover all your bases, cross all of your T's, dot all of your I's, and just make sure. We're happy to have that. We love confirming that you've done a requirement. Reach out to us so that we can do that for you. And another thing that I really wanted to reiterate there was, if you are not receiving our emails, that is a major red flag. I know there was like a trend on Twitter that went around about red flags. It's a red flag with Tennessee Promise if you are not getting our emails. So make sure that you're reaching out to us and updating that. I'm behind the scenes on our Instagram all the time. You can message 24/7 and get some type of reply from us. So if you have issues or questions, you can reach out that way. All right, guys. So this is a Q&A, and I see we've got a few questions coming in the chat, which is great. But if you have any other questions, we will get to those. Just type them in. It's easiest for us to track it if you go click the little question mark at the bottom, type your question in there, and we will get to all of them and answer them on the live. Let's go ahead and get to the first one. Jessica, if you want to take it, I'll read them off, and you can answer them, or we can go back and forth. So this one is, what if I put the wrong email address on the FAFSA?
Right, that's a great question. So with the FAFSA, it's kind of a tricky question, I feel like, because it depends if you use the wrong email on your FSA ID. So if that's the case, and Ben, step in if you'd like, but if that's the case, you can log back in and you can update that information related to your FSA ID, because that's actually connecting your social security number. So you should be able to go in and update your contact information with your FSA ID.
Yeah, I'm not sure the way that the new FSA ID is set up. I don't think you can actually completely create the FSA ID without verifying your email address. So it shouldn't let you enter an incorrect email, because you've got to go verify it by entering a code. I know in the past you could, and you may be able to like skip past that part. But my advice is, in that process, in terms of creating your FSA ID, when you're entering that contact information first time, do everything that it asks in terms of verifying your email and your phone number. Because the problem is, if you put the wrong email address and you're like, oh, I'll go back and fix it later, and you forgot your username and password, there's no way to recover your password, and then you're in trouble there. So do the email verification. That way you know you've got the right email address entered, and you can get back in your account if you were to forget your password.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you have. Here's a softball of a question. I'm going to let you answer it. What's the Tennessee Promise Scholarship?
That's a great question. So
great question.
There are so many things that we could explain here, but in general terms, the Tennessee Promise Scholarship is a last dollar scholarship that is available to all graduating seniors in the state of Tennessee. So the Tennessee Promise Scholarship, like I said, it's last dollar, which just means it'll be applied directly to your institution after all other state and federal aid. And it'll cover tuition and mandatory fees. So not every single fee associated with college. For example, it's not going to cover books, class-specific fees, but it's going to cover a large chunk of your costs at a community college or a Tennessee College of Applied Technology. So those are all community colleges, all TCATs, Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology, are eligible for Tennessee Promise. And there are some four-year institutions that you can also use Tennessee Promise at, but there are a couple things to keep in mind. You must be enrolled in an associate's degree program, and in most cases, it's not going to be truly last dollar. So it's really important that you're checking with your financial aid office at those four-year institutions to see exactly what you may be responsible for covering. And to be eligible for Tennessee Promise, you have to apply by November 1st of your senior year, and then you will continue to have requirements in order to maintain that eligibility, FAFSA being one of them by February 1st.
Yeah, that's awesome. Perfect summary. All right. Good question here. Should pop up here. Why do you need income information? So I'll take this one. So when you file your FAFSA, you're going to provide your parent and your personal income information to determine what type of aid you're eligible for. So by completing the free application for federal student aid, you're determining if you're eligible for a federal Pell Grant. You're determining if you're eligible for need-based state aid. And we utilize your parents' income to determine. The federal government uses your parents' income to determine that. So you have to provide that information so that the application can actually process and we can see what aid you're eligible for, so that that'll help decide how Tennessee Promise needs to pay for you to attend one of the eligible institutions. So it's a necessity to ensure that you're receiving all the aid that you're entitled to. Mm-hmm. Good question. All right, guys. What about the Hope Scholarship? So I can take this one too if you want me to. The Hope Scholarship, it kind of works alongside Tennessee Promise. It's a state scholarship. It's merit-based, so it's based on your high school GPA or your ACT score. You got to have a high school GPA of a 3.0 or an ACT score of a 21 to be eligible for the Hope. And it provides tuition assistance at eligible institutions. So all Tennessee four-year colleges and community colleges is where the Hope Scholarship is applied. At a Tennessee community college, it provides about $1,500 of funding per semester, a little bit more than that at the four-year college, but I'd recommend that you check with them just to be sure of all of the numbers. So it's a merit-based scholarship here in Tennessee. How will we know how much aid we're eligible for from the FAFSA? You want to take that one?
Yeah, I can try to cover that one. So when you complete your FAFSA, as Ben mentioned, you do have to enter your parent or guardian's income information, and they spit out, I'm not going to explain too in depth, but they spit out something that's called an EFC, which is estimated family contribution. This is not going to be a number that tells you how much aid you're going to receive. I know sometimes it can be like, oh, it spit out a specific number, this is what I'm receiving. That is just it's a complicated kind of equation that they use, and you won't actually know from your FAFSA right when it spits it out what you're going to receive. So you will list those colleges on your FAFSA, and then every college you're listing, your FAFSA information will be sent to that institution, and then they will figure out in the financial aid kind of what you're eligible for, if you're eligible for Hope, if you're eligible for the Pell Grant. So it's really important once you've decided on your college, obviously make sure your FAFSA makes it to that college, list them on there. Make sure you're continuing to check your college account to ensure you're completing all of your enrollment steps. And then the financial aid office will work to make sure you're getting all the aid that you're eligible for. But it will be something that will show up on your account as it gets closer to the beginning of the semester and you've enrolled in courses. Anything you want to add, Ben?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that the FAFSA is never going to tell you how much aid you're eligible for. It's an application, but your financial aid office processes that application, and then, like Jessica said, will basically report out how much financial aid you're eligible for. They're going to provide you with a summary once you're enrolled in your classes, and they do all of their the algorithm between what classes you're enrolled in, what you're eligible for in terms of federal aid, and then they look at state, and then they look at local scholarships. They look at all of the funding that you're eligible for, and they spit out a summary that will cover all of that. So it'll be on your college's account. So like for me, when I was a Tennessee Achieve student back in the day, I went to Pellissippi, and they have a thing called My Pellissippi. And every college has one of those types of login situations, and it's just called something different everywhere else, but in there is where it's housed, and you'll be able to log into your financial aid record and see how much aid you're eligible for. But you do the FAFSA to become eligible for that funding, and by providing that information, it allows the college to make that determination. Good question. That's a really common confusion because people think FAFSA is like it's a financial aid, but really it's just an application that you utilize to try to gain access to these different forms of funding. It can be lots of different things. All right, any other questions, guys? Looks like we've answered all the ones that are in the chat. The only one that came through on the question, type something in here. Let's answer those questions if you have anything. If not, we're coming up on our 15 minutes. See if anybody else has anything else. Jeff, do you have any parting words before we wrap this up?
I think the final thing I would say is obviously as a Tennessee Promise student, you have to complete that FAFSA by February 1 to remain eligible for Tennessee Promise. But even if you're on here and you are thinking, I maybe am not using Tennessee Promise or whatever the case may be. Obviously, we hope that you will meet the Tennessee Promise requirement even as just a backup plan, but it's also important to know you should complete this FAFSA anyways. If you are planning to enroll basically anywhere, you are going to need to complete this FAFSA application, and not completing it, you could be leaving a lot of money on the table that you could be receiving when you are planning to attend college. So it's an important step to complete regardless of what your plans may be, where you're planning to attend. It's a necessary step for all of you. And if you have questions, make sure you reach out to any of us at Tennessee Achieves, whether it be on one of our social media platforms, or you can respond to any of those emails or text messages we send you.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice. I'm glad that. I think about it as a Tennessee Promise requirement so much that it is even more than that. It's every college student. My wife, graduate student, completes the FAFSA, right? So everybody does that. I've got a couple little questions here, and then I'll wrap it up. So my FAFSA isn't letting me do the parent signature, but I have to contact someone to reset everything because I've tried to restart it myself. So I'm not sure exactly what kind of problem you're having there. If it's more of a technical issue on the FAFSA, then we can definitely help you try to troubleshoot that. If it's a problem with you're not remembering your parents' FSA ID login, which is oftentimes the challenge, kind of the sticky point here, you'll want to go back and reset the password for the FSA ID for your parent. DM us here on Instagram or reply to an email that you got from us this week, and we'll help you troubleshoot that. Kind of hard to do that here. Kind of sounds like a specific situation. So reach out to us, and we will definitely help you troubleshoot that problem. How often do you need to fill out the FAFSA? Every year. So you're going to have a deadline every year. That actually leads me to my final point as we wrap this up. So every student every year must file the FAFSA. It opens on October 1st every year. And for Tennessee Promise, the deadline's always February 1st. So for the 2022-2023 FAFSA that you're filing right now, deadline to file February 1st, 2022. After that, you'll go a couple of months, and then the FAFSA will open again on October 1st, 2022, and we'll be filing for the next deadline. So as long as you're in college, you are going to be filing FAFSA. This year, they're focused on the 2022-2023 FAFSA on February 1st. Final thing I want to leave you guys with, and we can wrap this up, is check your emails. Jessica works really hard every week on typing up and crafting good, meaningful emails for you, including those reminder emails that you're going to get usually on Thursdays. Don't overlook those. Don't think that those are not important. Don't file them away. Read them, take them serious, and do the things that it says. If it's to check your college GPA, check your college GPA. If it's file the FAFSA, file the FAFSA. And if you have questions about that, get in touch with us and let us help you get this requirement out of the way so that you're successfully enrolling this fall. Again, my name is Ben Sterling. You can contact us on our Instagram account anytime that you have questions. This live is going to be available as a recording for the rest of the year, so you can go back and track down these answers to these questions if you'd like to. But Jessica, thank you so much for hopping on with us today. We look forward to seeing you guys in a couple of weeks after Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Ben.